Okay, so hi, thank you for coming. My name is Ekaterina Moraru, and I'm an interaction designer for XWiki. I'm going to talk about open source design feedback, and it's going to be a panel mostly, and these are my colleagues from the open source design community. And I want it to be a very interactive session, but because we have only 25 minutes and 20 to 25 minutes and the topic is very, very broad, I will encourage also the audience to participate. So if you want to participate to the questions that are being asked, because I don't know, maybe we'll not have time to ask everybody, you can use the QR codes and the surveys there, and we can see also what you think about the topics. Well, and the first question are who do you represent? So that will be an easy question for you, like if you are designers or developers or other things. And I will also start when you introduce yourself, and I will ask the panel members to say their names and the community they're representing. So Bernard, you want to start?
So hello, I'm Bernard, the guy from just before. I'm part of the open source design community. I'm an user researcher and interaction designer, and I'm trying to sort of get more involved in more open source projects. That's me.
I'm Jan, and you probably already know that I'm from the previous talk that I am at Nextcloud, and I'm mainly interaction designer, and I'm also active in open source design and a few other open source projects.
Hi, I'm Elio. I'm a visual designer. Let's go a bit closer.
Yeah, because the camera needs to be here.
I'm a visual designer, mostly doing stuff for Mozilla and Tor project, and I'm representing URA, where we help many other open source projects with design.
Hi everyone, my name is Victoria. I'm an engineer with an interest in usability. I represent First Asia open source design, and I try to work on Valentina project.
So let's see if somebody from the audience participated to the survey.
Oh yeah.
Okay, so we have 5 designers and 5 developers. That's great. This means that it's very equilibrated talk. Bon, so the first questions that I will ask the panel, it's what do they think that understanding the designer motivations improves the feedback? And what I mean by that, the audience will need to discuss and to say what do they think motivates a designer to participate in the open source. And some example of options are money, fame, or sharing experience or not. And for you guys, do you think it's important when you provide design feedback to understand why the designer is contributing, or you want to keep it professional, it doesn't matter? Hard question.
Anyone?
So do you think that if you know that a designer wants money in open source, you should treat it different? Or if you know that it's his, I don't know, doing this pro bono, you should maybe be more polite to him? Or is it change the approach for communities when... Yes.
Great.
So I think that design contribution is no different from any other contribution to open source, and it's very important to play by the rules of the community. So if you want to be a part of the open source project, you need to explain how you came to this decision, and it's a difficult topic usually. So in UX design especially, the most important process is explain the journey, why you make these decisions, and then you have a chance to succeed and make your contribution accepted.
I wanted to add something about that as well. So when an open source project is born, there's a need for something new, and the founders of that project understand the importance very, very clearly. So one of the problems which comes up when a designer comes into the game is that the communication of the importance of the mission of the whole thing, why the people are doing this, is not translated well to the designer. So this is why there might be a lot of technical contributors, because they understand the need for the project, while designers might lack that understanding. And I think there is a gap between the communication between the technical leads of the project and designers, because it's like it's like telling you why I love that particular kind of coffee. It's like no one will understand that unless you explain them, because the coffee beans are roasted in that way and it's because it's fair trade, blah blah blah. If you talk in that process, like you can that's why you like that so much. Okay, I understand why this is so important to you. And if you are doing, especially if you are doing this pro bono, this is something a designer needs, I think.
There's something the audience said that designers are motivated to gain experience and to share experience, and are not really motivated by money and fame.
Yeah.
What do you think about this?
Yeah, I mean,
People around.
I would agree. So I also wanted to say something like touching on what Victoria said. I think it's like, because design, or we shouldn't treat design as art, of course, because it's quantifiable, and it's basically any designer, whatever they do, like if they do it full time or if they do it pro bono, or if they're just a volunteer, they're just kind of a voice for the user, basically, or for whoever is using it in the end. So usability is quantifiable, so it doesn't really matter in what capacity you contribute to the project. So it's like you're just a channel for better usability, for making better design happen. So yeah, that shouldn't be part of like who you are or why you contribute to the project. Yeah.
Okay. The next question for audience is, who is the target in open source project? And the options are the owners, the designers, the users, and the world. And this is an interesting question. So the panel should ask how understanding the panel improves the feedback the community gives. One example I could give is that when a committer looks at the design thing, he doesn't think about his users, he's just providing subjective feedback. So who is the target in open source, and how is that important, and how does that influence?
Well, I think the first question, who's the
Target.
the target? Well,
Target, I mean,
Target audience.
a target audience of your project, of your open source project, and how understanding that helps you provide better feedback.
I think it's probably the world. I mean, and the world contains the users and everybody else.
So, for example, what do you think about designers that consider themselves to be expert in a certain domain? Should the designer be considered the one that provides the most important feedback?
No, it should also be the user. Well, it should be the users ultimately, and the designer is the voice of the user. The contributors who write code are also probably the users, possibly. So you have to take into account everybody's feedback.
I mean, I just think it's important that we don't see we don't say the target audience is everyone, because then we don't have particular focus, right? So we have to first focus on like a specific group, and then maybe specifically cut that up into different groups of target audiences. So yeah, I definitely don't think it's the world, because like, I don't know, not like only half of the world is using the internet or something. So for example, that, right? So it's definitely not the world. Yeah.
People said the world, and I don't know, about 14 said users. Yeah, the options are a bit blurry, so yeah. For example, when you say the world, you could say that when you do a design feedback or proposal, you can put it on Twitter for everybody to see it. And that could be considered the world. Either you just show them to your community.
I'm not sure if it's on topic. That I just wanted to add, it's easy to say for whom we build software, for users, but it's very difficult to follow this, and we sometimes assume, oh, I'm the user, I know everything. So if you build a project, just go out and see people use your product. That's the only one way we can learn. So the users, whoever you see using your project, and then you learn and improve. So.
And Jan said that the world can be very hard to make it very specific, because if it's the world, you are not surely who you're targeted. Are they advanced users? Are they normal users? Are they from a specific geographic region? And this might be or not important when you propose something. Well, the next question questions we have is who makes the final decision? And this is one of the important things, and this should be actually clarified from the start. Options for the audience are owners, designers, users, and the world. So they're the same options from before.
So I have some personal experience with that. I guess I think I mentioned that before. So when someone asks you for contribution, it's hard to understand who makes the final decision, and doing that in the beginning, right in front, can avoid a lot of misunderstandings in the later, because sometimes people want to work in the open, doing requests on open source design, but they want to have the final decision. So if you are an open source project, you are the founder of the project, you want to create it, you want to have the process in the open, but you want to have the final decision in the end. So, okay, I can understand that, but that would be great if you can say that. Sometimes you want the community to have the decision. So this creates, this can avoid quite a lot of conflicts if it's in the brief, because open source design is quite niche yet. It's nice to have a clear communication and
Okay.
Oh, wow.
So we have, I don't know, 14 people that say owners and committers.
But designers are not committers.
Designers are external, so you can externalize the...
So I believe that community have to decide always, and community will balance itself. And please give your opinion. So I think it's those who make the software, and those are committers and designers all together, and they as a community make decisions. We cannot separate it.
Right.
Thanks. I think, like in many cases, it will ideally become a discussion between all of these groups. I suppose that like only one person is responsible would be sort of very classic management, and I hope that in our projects we can have a discussion together and make sense of it together.
Bernard, you want to say something?
No, a combination of everybody.
Sorry. On the other hand, I think that design by committee is a way for things to go certainly wrong. So I think that there is one reason that you might decide that, okay, after all the discussion, if you haven't reached some kind of consensus, somebody has to make a final hard decision. And in my opinion, that should be the designer.
And since you said that, I would expect if there was a design made, there was some research or some testing done with users, and I would look for the data. And if there was no data, then it's more difficult. But if you've done usability testing with X number of people, here's data, there's no data, this is the default. Would be my...
Yeah, I mean, it's difficult to make a decision without any, like if it's just opinion against opinion, or if we treat design as an opinion. So yeah, again, research basically trumps these factors, like objective factors. Yeah.
I just think it's important not to think of design as an opinion, because I mean, you go to school, you learn a profession, and that, I mean, you can't always have statistical data saying it's a good design. It is a profession, and yeah.
Anyone else?
The next question is, how does time influence the feedback process?
So something very problematic I've seen is bike shedding, like people talking about, maybe that color should be a bit more purplish or something, but because I like purple. So that's not the right thing to approach things, and bike sharing generally takes a lot of time and is waste of time. As I said, depends really on the who takes the decision. So it depends on the question before. So the bigger the community or decision-making committee is, the longer it takes. So if it's only one decision maker, it obviously takes much less time, but it's less transparent. So it's a compromise always.
One thing to know is that in open source, design process and feedback can take like a couple of months. So even in our community, we've seen proposals that didn't receive for, I don't know, 5 months responses, etc. And for designers, can be very hard to go back in that mindset and remember what they did there and create another iteration. So yeah.
But oftentimes the time also helps to rethink and like get out of the thing you were stuck in back then. So you can get removed from like your baby that you created as a designer and you're so attached to, and you get detached a bit and you can think about it more clearly again. So.
And another thing that is very important when you request design work, it's to also mention how much time that designer has to work or not. Because, for example, when requesting things for free, there might not be an urgency. And if you want something very fast, at least tell that designer that, I don't know, that, okay, it's free and it's fine, but you need it urgent or not. No? Okay, well, you want to say? Yeah.
What would be great sometimes, like often people seem to be unsure what they need, and that's like super valid if you don't know how to approach a design problem, if you're not a designer yourself. And in that case, I think it would help, for example, communities like ours. A lot of people would be just frank about it and say, I would like to have that improved, but I don't know why, so please first help me to make a good decision about that.
I think that's really important because design isn't just about going away and doing something in your tower and coming back and saying, here it is. It's also talking with the people who've asked you, and if they don't know what they need, then it's your job to go back to the start and say, okay, what is it that you're looking for? And let's talk in the simplest of language. And then you get to the point where you've got a better understanding of the design thing that you're trying to do. Okay, now I understand. And it'll save pain and hurt.
Okay, this is more like trying to make a summary of the things we discussed, and it was, if you were to pick one of the factors that is the most important in the design process, which one would be? And the options were knowing who is the decision maker, or knowing what is the motivation for designer, or understanding the need, knowing the target, knowing time constraint, or any other thing. And currently, for example, the most important factor from the audience, they consider to be the need. So understanding first the need when you do a design.
So talking to people.
So.
Yeah, I mean, like, of course, I agree, it's the need, but unfortunately, most often the reality is that you actually don't have time to do usability testing, especially in open source. So unfortunately, it ends up being just a whole bunch of opinions of a whole bunch of people on your issue tracker. So I think that's actually, a good point that, understanding the need is the most important point, and doing usability testing or any kind of testing is a very, very important thing in design as a whole, but especially in open source projects.
Yeah, it's been mentioned before. I think it's the most important thing is that design, not to treat design as an opinion, because like people look at it as a form of art, which it isn't. So, for example, you cannot say I like red, so let's make the logo red. Because you need to understand that red might be aggressive. It might, in some countries, it might have a different meaning. You might want to know that sans serif as font is different than serif fonts because blah blah blah. So you gotta have arguments. I think I can understand if you don't have the background to get that, but comments like I love it or I hate it because meh. are kind of like unconstructive. So I think this kills the process of feedback.
Yeah, +1.
Okay, and the final question, and one of the most important, is when should the feedback process stops? And the audience has options like after X number of votes, or I forgot.
When the committer decides to?
When the committer decides to, when the designer decides to, after a number of iterations.
The designer? No, that's another.
When someone cries.
Someone great. So the main questions was, do you need to do like X iterations, or do you need to wait like 7 months, or do you need to make the designer happy? Do you need to make the committers happy, the world, or I don't know.
I mean, if we talk about it on a broader scale, I think the feedback process never stops because software is ever changing, and so that also helps making the individual feedback processes stop, because we say, okay, what's the best for like the next half year, or what's the best for right now, and then we also have things for more future iterations. So I think, yeah, at the same time, it's good to realize, yeah, this will change in the future maybe anyway, and 5 years ago it looked much different, yeah, but that also helps for the immediate decision to say, this is going to change in the future maybe anyway, but we can always revisit it, but for now let's decide on something which works for now.
So I see that the winner is when owners are happy.
Yes.
Are they ever happy? So I think that it's very important to kind of know that there should be time for several iterations, because the first result would be never the best one. So when you plan to design something, just accept the idea that it should go through several iterations, and even if you're not happy with the first one, move on and iterate again. So the process never stops, because we improve software constantly, and it never gets to the best point, because everything is changing, software has to change as well. So process never stops.
I strongly disagree with this result. I'm sorry. I just want to do a comparison with that. Like, there's a reason there's a CTO, there's a reason there's a creative lead. So imagine like a designer taking on the CTO position. Hey, I don't like this line of code. Like, please don't do it like that. I don't like that. So it's the equivalent of the owners not liking or liking the decision. So if you have asked a designer to help you, what's the point of asking a designer when you're doing the decision yourself anyway, right? Do you just need a robot to implement the design for something which you have in mind? Because that's not how design works. So I think like everyone has their own skills, and this should be respected, of course, in a more open and transparent way. So yeah, that's it in a nutshell.
Just a final thought, because you're late.
So I completely disagree with this result as well. The software is being developed, I presume, for users. The designer's opinion doesn't really matter. If the users are happy with the software and they're using it more, and there are more users and everybody is happy, that's a win. That's my opinion. Thank you.
Maybe we just didn't have the option when the users...
Yeah, maybe there's no option.
You can say it.
Katharina was being intentionally provocative.
Yeah. Okay, so thank you so much. We also have, please provide feedback for the sessions, and thank you so much for participating in this.